Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 2 of What If Deku Had Vector Manipulation. Also check out the playlists that I have made on this channel. But hope you guys enjoy. Izuku looked down towards the building and sighed. I thought they weren't going to make me do a lot of jobs, he muttered. He looked at the sky and noticed the sun was coming up. Our protagonist stretched and grinned. Alright, no more beating around the bush. He jumped down and threw his hand onto the building. After he did this, the side of the building collapsed, which left a huge opening. He flew inside the warehouse and looked around, and what he saw made him clench his fist in anger. All around him were tubes. And inside the tubes were human-looking things, but instead of a normal head, they had a bird head. Who in their right mind would do this? That's when he heard someone run out of the room and left through an exit. Oi, get back here! He rushed forward towards the door, but that's when he heard glass shatter. Wait, what was that noise? He looked to his side and saw one of the creatures that were in the tubes going towards him. Oh, they're still alive, and in that moment the creature made it to where he was and threw a punch at the white-haired boy. But before the punch made contact, it got stopped by his barrier. The creature started to screech, and that's when the other 4 creatures that were in the tubes woke up and broke out of them. Well, allow me to put you out of your misery. He put his hand on the Nomu's face and the creature exploded. After he did this, the other creatures rushed towards him, but Izuku looked at them in pity. No one should have to go through this. He then put his hand towards the ground and made the ground collapse. He then remembered his mother's words earlier. She told him to not destroy this building and whatever is inside of it. Alright, I will just do this then. He then broke off a piece of the ground and sent it towards the Nomus. After he launched the first one, he sent more rocks towards the others. 2 of the 4 got destroyed from the onslaught, but the other one to the left, which was a different color from the rest, was able to punch through the attack, and it rushed to Izuku. Which surprised said boy, so this one is stronger than the others. He bent down and used the ground beneath him to rush towards the Nomu at high speeds. Our protagonist was now in front of the creature, and he thought to himself, I should keep this one alive since this one seems different than the other one. He tried to grab its head but was surprised when he noticed one of the rocks from earlier got sent towards him. Ah, what the fuck? He was caught off guard, so the rock made contact with his face and sent him flying back, and he made another crater on the wall. Izuku groaned and touched the rock and shattered it. When I'm caught off guard like that, I can't protect myself with my barrier, he muttered. Our protagonist looked ahead and saw that the other Nomu was the one that threw the rock at him. But once the creatures noticed Izuku, they screeched and rushed towards him once again, but that's when Izuku put his hand up towards the 2. Alright, he grinned and stopped the 2 in their tracks. He then glanced at the other Nomu and shouted, now disperse. And the creature splattered into a million pieces. He glanced at the other Nomu and walked towards it, and that's when he put his hand on its head. Alright, I'm going to take you under my control, but that will leave me vulnerable. Side note, he can redirect the electrical signals of the human body and can take control of them. He can rewrite memories or look through them. However, this process requires his full attention, and he doesn't have enough to calculate for his redirection ability. So this will leave him vulnerable. But back to the story. He grit his teeth in annoyance. Why doesn't it let me see its memories? He tries again, but that's when the Nomu started to screech loudly. And it was to the point where it made Izuku start to bleed through his ears. Our protagonist stopped and removed his hand, but he was able to at least make the Nomu follow commands. But he backed away from the creature and thought to himself, it's like his brain was wired to only be able to follow commands, and everything else got erased. Our protagonist punched the ground in anger, which shook the entire building, but he calmed himself and pulled out his phone. He then dialed a number, and that's when someone answered. Izuku, were you able to search the building? Yes, mother, and you should make your way over here and see what they were doing. It looks like they were experimenting on human bodies and changing up their genetic code so they can be able to have multiple quirks. On the other end, the lady narrowed her eyes. Multiple quirks, how are you so sure? That shouldn't be possible. However, Izuku sighed and looked at the Nomu in front of him. Well, one of them had super strength and super speed, along with that I saw the other one regenerate from being pierced. Albeit I didn't see it fully since I got sent into a wall. Alright, right now I am at a meeting, but I will send some members there along with Hawks to help investigate. Okay, he hung up and put his phone away. Izuku looked back at the building and noticed all of the damage he caused. Maybe it wasn't a good idea to rip the ground apart. He then glanced around the destroyed room and noticed a computer. Our protagonist walked over to the computer and noticed that it said audio only. But that's when he heard a chuckle through the computer and Izuku narrowed his eyes. On the other end you can hear a man laughing and he started to clap. Well done, young man, you were able to find one of my hideouts and force the doctor to retreat. What doctor and who are you? Instead of answering, however, the man just chuckled darkly, which made Izuku take a stance. Oh, you will know in due time, my boy, or should I say Accelerator, but that's if you survive this. Survive what? He then glanced below him and noticed the change in temperature. Ah fuck, he then put his barrier up and remembered the Nomu. He grit his teeth and put a barrier around the creature as well. But that's when you hear a beep and the building they were in exploded, which caused a massive shockwave that got sent throughout the city. All the while Hawks was en route to the building and was a minute away, but that's when he saw the building explode. Wait, was Izuku still in there? He then doubled his speed and was now flying above the destroyed building. The smoke cleared up and revealed that the building was gone, but he narrowed his eyes and grinned. Hawks flew down towards the coughing Izuku. I knew that this wouldn't be enough to kill you. However, Izuku glanced to his side and sighed in relief. That made Hawks look over in that direction, and there he noticed the Nomu. That's the thing they were making in the building. It has multiple quirks. Hawks looked back at him in shock. Does the president know about this? Izuku just nodded and walked over towards the Nomu along with Hawks. The hero put his hand to his ear and spoke into it. Accelerator is fine, and bring a van or a truck so we can take this thing back to the base. Alright, he then removed his hand from his ear and looked at our protagonist. Let's take this above ground since the explosion destroyed the ground beneath the building as well. Izuku nodded and put his hand to the ground, and he sent the Nomu flying up into the air, which he caught by the neck. All the while Hawks looked at him and sighed. At least that worked, but he jumped up and flew towards our protagonist. The three made it to the front of the destroyed building and Izuku put the Nomu down. They then heard sirens heading their way. Hawks glanced at Izuku. So I heard you will be joining UA this year. Yeah, but I'm not so thrilled about it, he muttered. But Hawks just grinned and ruffled Izuku's hair. Come on, don't you want to be a hero, and that school is the best there is? However, Izuku just looked at him and sighed. Well, I just don't think it will be worthwhile, but anyways, he then turned around and noticed police cars coming towards them. That's when Hawks looked over his shoulder and saw that Endeavor was coming as well. Well, this isn't going to go well, he muttered. Boy, Izuku, you should go back to base and... But that's when Endeavor landed behind Hawks and Izuku noticed the hero. He grit his teeth and looked away. All the while Endeavor looked at the destroyed building and then back at Hawks. What happened here, and why is that brat here? Said brat looked at him and was about to say something, but that's when Hawks went in front of Izuku. You see, he's my intern. Our protagonist just looked at him and scoffed. Endeavor looked over at Izuku and narrowed his eyes. I know who he is, Hawks. Supposedly he is the strongest member in the Hero Association. But he just looks like a brat to me. Alright, I had just about enough of this. Izuku then walked over to Endeavor and stared at him. You called me a brat, right? Then all I see is a fake hero trying to be a real one. What did you say, brat? All the while Hawks looked at the two and noticed the temperature going up. He went in between the two and tried to calm them down, but that's when Izuku noticed the men in suits and walked over to them along with the Nomu. Here, this is what I was able to find in that warehouse. The men nodded and put the Nomu in their vehicle. Endeavor looked at the creature and muttered, I didn't even notice that thing. However, Izuku got Hawk's attention and spoke. Alright, I'm done here. He then jumped up and flew away. TSK, I want to kill Endeavor, but I know they wouldn't let me do it, but whatever. Izuku made it to his house and noticed that the lights were on. I guess she is back. He opened the door and noticed his mother on the couch. Oh, not this again, he muttered. But the lady noticed Izuku and spoke up. She looked at the boy and narrowed her eyes, but spoke in a serious tone. Why did the building blow up? I thought I specifically told you not to destroy it. Izuku just sighed. Well, I didn't destroy it. Once I defeated those creatures, I noticed in the corner of the room computers. So I walked over to it and noticed on the screen it said audio only and a man spoke into it. It sounded like he expected us to find his base. This made the woman look at the floor, so all for one is alive. She looked back at Izuku. Well, sorry for thinking that you destroyed the building, but in the past you didn't care much about collateral damage. I still don't, Izuku muttered. I know, and that's why I always remind you. The lady sighed. Well, just go get some rest and good job. Izuku nodded and went to his room. But anyways, now we time skip to 10 months later. Throughout the 10 months Izuku continued to do missions and was able to train, albeit it was for a little while. Anyways, Izuku was now in front of UA. He looked at the building and thought to himself, well, let's see how hard the recommendations exams are. Our protagonist walked into the building and noticed that there were only a few students. I guess they do recommendation exams and the one for the public in separate days. That's when a teacher walked in and introduced himself to the students. My name is Vlad King and I will be your examiner. But alright, everyone take a seat and we will do the written exam first, and after that we will do the practical. All of the students did what they were told and took their seats. When everyone was seated, Vlad King spoke up once again. Alright, you all can start, but try to finish this test within the hour. Our protagonist looked at the test and thought to himself, I won't even need 10 minutes to complete this. And 5 minutes later he completed the test and walked over to the front of the room. All of the others noticed him and wondered if he completed the test already. However, the white-haired boy was now in front of the hero and he handed him his test. I finished and I also corrected some of the mistakes that were on there. He looked at the shock in Vlad's face and grinned. Well, are you going to take it? Right, just sit down until everyone else is done. Alright, and Izuku walked over back to his seat and noticed that some people were laughing at him. But he just shrugged and sat down. Vlad King looked over at the test and thought to himself, might as well grade it myself. He then looked over it and was surprised when he saw all of the answers were correct, and the intentional errors they had. The boy had fixed them. Vlad pulled out his phone and called Nizu. After a few seconds the Chimera answered. Yes, what is it, Vlad? Did something go wrong? Nizu asked. Oh no sir, it's just someone already finished the test within 5 minutes. So who is this boy, Vlad King? Oh right, his name is Izuku Midoriya. Nizu grinned and sipped his coffee. Alright, let's wait till everyone else is done, but inform Midoriya that he will have a different practical test from the others. Vlad raised his eyebrow but agreed and hung up. But Nizu glanced at the window and thought to himself, let's see how strong Accelerator is. He then called Power Loader and asked to bring some of the zero-pointers along with any robots he could spare to ground Gamma. Anyways, back to the test. Everyone had completed it and was told to get changed and meet him outside. Izuku was going to follow the rest, but that's when Vlad King got his attention. You are going to be doing a different test from them. Okay, I figured as much, so where do I go once I change? That's when another man walked up behind Vlad and spoke to Izuku. You will be going to ground Gamma and I will take you there after you change. Izuku shrugged and walked over to the changing room along with the man with a scarf around his neck. So are you a teacher here? Yes I am, but go get changed, I will be waiting right here. Not much of a talker, Izuku mumbled, but he did as he was told. He changed into a black tracksuit and was wearing black shoes as well, but he went out of the changing room and walked over to Aizawa, who nodded to him and started to walk towards a bus. Izuku followed and went inside with Aizawa. They waited about 5 minutes and that's when the bus stopped at the side of a big gate and the teacher walked out. He pointed at the gate. Alright, you wait here until they say go. Our protagonist nodded and waited, but Aizawa went back into the bus and went towards the spectators' room. Once he got there he noticed that Nizu and All Might were there, but they noticed Aizawa and looked back at the screen all the while Nizu spoke into the mic. And over the intercoms Izuku could hear the Chimera speaking, alright, so you will battle robots and will have 10 minutes to destroy them all. Alright, Izuku stretched a bit and grinned once he saw the gate open. immediately after he rushed in, accelerating his movement to look like he had super speed, but anyways. He jumped up and flew above the buildings, and there he noticed 4 massive robots along with about 30 other smaller ones. Do they really think this will be enough to be a challenge? He then flew down and landed in front of the robots. The shockwave from his landing destroyed some of the smaller robots and cracked the ground under him. He looked at the robots, and all of them locked onto Izuku and sent projectiles towards him. However, Izuku just walked towards them and the projectiles hit their mark and created a small smokescreen. Once it cleared, our protagonist grinned and rushed towards the robots and swiped his hand towards them. What followed was gusts of winds got sent towards them and destroyed all of the smaller ones and left a dent in the 0-pointers, but nowhere near enough to destroy them. But our protagonist rushed towards them and made it in front of one of the 4. He touched it, and a second later the robot was destroyed. Izuku did this by changing how it was wired and was able to make it explode. All the while Nizu looked at the screen and glanced at All Might. Do you think he is even trying? And said Hiro just shook his head no, and on the screen you can see Izuku destroying the other 3 0-pointers like they were nothing. Aizawa glanced at Nizu and spoke, "Put him in my class, I don't mind teaching him." I was already planning on doing that. He stamped Izuku's application and on the front it says Class 1A. But anyways, that is the end of this part. If you enjoyed this part, leave a like and subscribe. Also tell me in the comments on how this part had came out, and if you have any what if suggestions, let me know.